the basis for all the laws in the United States.
Those 4 founding documents.
So I'm going to teach you a little bit about history right now. This first document, called the Declaration of Independence, beautifully, beautifully written document. This withstood the test of time. The Declaration of Independence was supposed to free this country. Well, 2 days before this, the Lee Resolution actually freed this country. The Lee Resolution was written on a napkin in pencil. And it was sent to England, and it was recorded on the land. And it had the vote. It had the vote. How many yeas and how many nays in our congressional session there, before this country was even formed. It had the vote, and it had a signature from one member of each of the 13 colonies on the Lee Resolution. And the Lee Resolution is in this book. And this book, by the way, everybody has been asking me for this book for years. And it's stuff I've collected over 35 years that I use to teach out of and teach these classes. Where's Katie? Where'd she go? See, I was just going to credit her. She's not in the room. Katie took this book home with her, and believe me, when it left my hands, I almost cried. This book was, for me, was irreplaceable. And it was hard for me to turn loose of. I had a death grip on it. She goes, "Give me that." And she takes it home, and she scans it, she digitized it, and it's now available for sale so that you can use it to teach others. But there's 35 years of my collection in here of stuff you can use to teach with. What? A lot. Totally different things. No, you're going to have to, it's digitized. She'll have to send it to you on Telegram, because you can't email it. It's too big to email. She'll send it to you on Telegram. You print it off, and you can create your own book. So, I'm going to give you the history that I promised here. A year before this document, a year before, we're going back to 1775. What happened in 1775? In 1775, the Grand Army of the Republic was started, now known as the United States Army. Shortly thereafter, the United States Navy was put into effect. 60 days later was the United States Marines. And when the Grand Army of the Republic was put into place, the United States Code of Military Justice was adopted as the laws of the United States. There's a reason I'm telling you this. In 1775, what is now the Uniform Code of Military Justice was adopted as the laws of the United States. And the most famous of all British soldiers, General George Washington, was made commander of the Grand Army of the Republic in 1775. Now I'm getting to something here. This country has always been under military occupation and military rule. Always. The state of Washington was created, and I don't mean the state of Washington on the West Coast. The state of Washington was a land grant given by the king to General George Washington, a British soldier, and it was located in Virginia. And the Washington Monument sits in the center of the land grant, the land patent. And the Washington Monument is the pillar, the fourth pillar, the military arm of the world. And it always has been. England got the banking pillar. The Vatican got the right to souls pillar. I want you to understand this. Washington became Washington, D.C., the 10 square mile land grant, which is a foreign nation under British rule, given to the #1 general in the British Army. And when we fought the Revolutionary War, the king was very smart. See, we kicked the crap out of him on the battlefield, and we wanted to go home. And what we do when we go home as Americans is we go raise families and build cabins and expand west. We plant gardens and we raise kids and we raise animals and we raise crops. And we cut down timber and we clear land. And that's what Americans do, because they're free men and women. And they won their freedom. But the king, being a smart king, right after we kicked the crap out of the British, the king put out a proclamation. And that proclamation said that those British soldiers, see, he knew it was going to cost a lot of money to put them on ships and haul their losers back to England. So he said, those British soldiers who would like to remain on the shores of America shall remain as British citizens. What did I just say? Shall, that's a commandment, shall remain as British citizens to provide the free men and women, see, he made a distinction, of America with essential governmental services. And the King of England granted 10 square miles of Virginia to General George Washington, their #1 soldier,
I'm attending an online
to
3-day
lead this
workshop.
nation's army, the
Okay,
Grand Army of the
comma.
Republic.
You can text me though, period.
In 1775. And George Washington divided this country into districts. Did he divide this country? Or did he divide America? What do you think America stood for? The North American continent. I'll prove it to you. You're going to love my artwork. These are the Great Lakes. This is Maine, Florida, Texas, California, Washington, and everything in between. And he divided this up into 12 districts. Canada became the 13th district, and Mexico became the 14th district of the District of Columbia, his 10 square miles. Education, communication, or lack thereof. If they didn't have the internet back then, they had postal mail. Actually, they really didn't even have that in 1775 the way they have it now. It took Benjamin Franklin to set up that. See, Benjamin Franklin set up the postal service, he set up all the courts, and he set up all the banks. And the courthouses used to say courthouse, bank, post office. And on many of the old ones, it's ingrained in marble right on the front of the building. Okay? You've got to understand how the history worked. And if you were to read the Articles of Confederation, Articles of Confederation, there's one. It'll tell you that Canada is part of the United States. That was written when? Huh? 1778. And it says Canada is part of the United States. Canada is the 13th district. Well, what's Castro's son doing up there then? Because it's all under the crown. Anything that's a district is under the crown. And if you don't believe me, there is a survey marker every 6 square miles that is a crown pin all the way across this country. 4-inch brass in the ground survey marker that tells you this nation belongs to England. Every 1 square mile is a USGS marker across this nation. United States Geological Survey marker. I know this because I used to develop property and build homes and develop lots of subdivisions. And I ran into these pins, and I can remember the day I ran into the first one. It was in 1995, and I called up Randy, my surveyor, and I said, Randy, I need you to come over here. I'm about to build 300 homes on this piece of property, and I found something. I got to know what it is. And he says, I'll be right there. And he drove from his office across town, came over to see me, and by then I'd got a little gasoline on a rag, and I'd polished it off. And I said, what's that? He looks at it and he says, well, that's something you're not supposed to know about. I said, too late. I know now. This whole country belonged to the crown. Don't believe me? More than 2.5 decades ago, I used to teach this in my seminars. I've been doing this 35 years. And I used to talk about the state's attorney general's offices. And back then, when the internet, I'm dating myself, when the internet was first coming aboard, see, when I started, it was all in books, guys. We couldn't research on the internet. There wasn't one. My first cell phone was an Alpine, and it was in a bag, and you had to plug it into a cigarette lighter of a car, or it didn't work. Shut up. Just laughing.